Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Sight for White, welcoming you to this week's Talking News on August Bank Holiday Weekend 2023. I'd like to remind everybody of our open day planned for Wednesday, the 13th of September 2023 at Wendy's Scout Hall. This year, as I've said, the event will be much more community-based. There will be the digital providers there, but we are very keen to get lots of other charities there who can offer holistic, all-round help to all of our members. So please do come along, give us a call at the office to let us know you're coming. Next week, our coffee morning reopens on Wednesday, the 30th of August. It would be lovely to see everybody again. All other activities resume the week after, starting with swimming on the Monday. All of our activities are detailed in our newsletter, which goes out quarterly. Wishing everybody a wonderful bank holiday weekend. Thank you, Lisa, CEO, Sight for White.
Isle of Wight Council leader faces new vote of no confidence. From Isle of Wight Radio, read by Joyce. An Alliance Group spokesman claims controversial Isle of Wight school closure plans are at the heart of a motion of no confidence levelled against the Isle of Wight Council's leader, the second in as many months. However, Conservative Group leader, Councillor Susie Ellis, has not elaborated on the reason for today's, Tuesday, announcement, saying she did not want to go into specifics, subsequently adding it was one of a number of considerations. A vote over leadership at County Hall will be held on September the 20th. More details are expected after an agenda paper is published early next month. The motion has the support of 20 Isle of Wight councillors, representing more than half of those currently sitting at County Hall in Newport. In today's statement, Councillor Ellis, who has been in charge of the Tories since mid-July, said the council needs to have a leadership which is prepared to make the right and sometimes difficult decisions in a timely manner. The statement does not explain why the move is being taken just weeks after Councillor Ellis withdrew her support for a similar motion. In July, she said she would not be backing a plan led by the Empowering Islanders group of councillors, saying it did not reflect the approach she would be taking. A spokesman for the leading Alliance group of councillors claimed the Conservatives want to pursue school closures, suggesting 9 could shut. The spokesman said the Alliance group had opted for a more collaborative approach, saying, "We first need to deal with the position created by Hampshire County Council and use that opportunity to have a public debate as to how we best structure island education, and in particular, how we support our small and rural schools where possible." In July, Hampshire County Council said it would be terminating its children's services, education and skills partnership with the Isle of Wight Council. There is an ongoing issue with surplus places in primary schools, in other words, too few children to fill the available places across the island. A group of school leaders previously said 39 increasingly inefficient primaries could be reduced to around 30 more efficient ones to deal with the impact of surplus places on teacher recruitment, school finances, and the quality of education. In June 2022, Isle of Wight head teachers and governors wrote to the council to save pupils from what they called a mediocre education long into the future. Earlier this month, Alliance and Isle of Wight Council leader, Councillor Laura P.C. Wilcox, apologised for the way some announcements relating to education had been made. She took over as education lead, removing Councillor Debbie Andre as the cabinet member in charge. Instead, Councillor Andre will retain responsibility for children's services and lifelong skills, and will also take on the lead role for issues relating to poverty. If the motion announced today is successful, Councillor Ellis would take on the role of Councillor Leader. Councillor Ellis says her motion is not a reflection of Councillor P.C. Wilcox as an individual, adding she feels the leader has worked very hard and has discharged her duties with the best interests of the island in mind.
This is Michael reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Gurnard Housing Development Plans Revealed. Phase 2 of an Isle of Wight housing development has been unveiled. Filling in the gap on Place Road between the Range and the New Meadow View Park development on the edge of Gurnard, Bourne Developments is seeking permission to build more houses. In a new application submitted to the Isle of Wight Council's Planning Department, the Dorset-based developer is hoping to build 31 properties. Earlier this year, the first phase of 14 houses was approved for the site, meaning if this second application is successful, outline permission will stand for 45 houses in a range of 2, 3 and 4 bed properties. In the second phase, 11 of the houses could either be affordably rented or able to buy through an affordable scheme. The remaining could go on the open market. The outline plans are only seeking permission for the access to and layout of the site, so further details like the scale, appearance and landscaping will all be determined in another application. The 1.3 hectare grassland site stands next to an overgrown and disused historic poultry farm on which Phase 1 will be built. You can view the plans 23/01337/OUT on the Council's Planning Register. Comments can be submitted until September the 18th.
This is Patrina reading from the Island Echo. Isle of Wight Council faces 8.5 million cumulative deficit over the next 2 years. New data released by the BBC Shared Data Unit has revealed that the Isle of Wight Council faces a cumulative deficit of 8.5 million across 2024-25 and 2025-26. This is significantly below the national average of 33 million, although these figures are inflated by the exceptional shortfalls faced by, among others, Thurrock, 521 million, and Slough, 339 million over the same period. The Isle of Wight Council is also below the national average when it comes to planned savings, 3.9 million over the same period, compared to the national average of 13.9 million. However, this is again skewed by the different sizes of various authorities. The approved rising council tax of 4.99% on the island is above the national average of 4.79%, but even combined with the estimated planning savings, the council faces a significant hole in its finances. Unlike other authorities in even more dire circumstances, the data shows that the Isle of Wight Council has not approved using financial reserves, nor has it applied for exceptional funding support. However, a large part of the shortfall can be explained by a 7.6 million increase in spending on adult social care, which is not covered by funding provided by the Adult Social Care Precept and the additional social care grant from central government. The Local Government Association said inflation, the living wage and the energy costs were all adding to budget books. Mike Short, head of local government for Unison, said, council finances are in the direst of states. As the government tightens the squeeze on local budget, services either vanish or are scaled down dramatically. However, a spokesperson for the Department of Levelling Up, Housing and Communities has said, no decision on funding levels for beyond 2024-25 in England will be taken until the next spending review. So these numbers are unsupported. Councils in England have benefited from an increase in core spending power of up to 5.1 billion in 2023-24 compared to the previous year, with almost 60 billion made available for local government overhaul. We are making up to 4.7 billion available to the adult social care system in England in 2024-25 and have also confirmed an uplift to the revenue support grant, while setting out a core council tax referendum principle for 24-25 of 3%, plus a further 2% for councils with adult social care responsibilities.
This article, read by Howard, is from Isle of Wight Radio and concerns children's services on the Isle of Wight. Isle of Wight Council's Children's Services Department needs a new head amid turmoil in County Hall's education policy. In March, Education and Inclusion Deputy Director Brian Pope and former Department Director Steve Crocker left the Isle of Wight Council. Their positions were shared between the Island and Hampshire County Council, and both were based on the mainland. Now, a successful candidate is required to take the lead as the two councils' working partnerships comes to an end. Isle of Wight Council's Appointments and Employment Committee members could agree to start the recruitment process when they meet on Tuesday, August 29th. Committee members could also agree to look at interim arrangements to cover the transition. A report being presented to them warns any delay in starting the recruitment process puts the Isle of Wight Council at risk of not being able to fulfil its statutory duties. If they agree to place a job advert, interviews could take place at the start of November. The Isle of Wight Council-based position is expected to command a salary of at least £109,700, according to County Hall's pay policy. A draft job summary says the new director will spearhead an innovative and integrated approach to the delivery of children's services. It can take at least 6 months to fill such a senior position, and interim boss Stuart Ashley, formerly the Deputy Director for Children and Families, is currently in the role. For the past year, the Isle of Wight Council has been trying to deal with the issues of too many empty places in primary schools, a lack of teacher recruitment, and tightening budgets. In July, the Island Authority was shocked by the news of Hampshire County Council's decision to terminate a decade-old partnership, choosing to focus on children in its own county. Last month, council leader, Councillor Laura P.C. Wilcox, apologised for the way certain announcements about potential school closures had been made, and she assumed the role of education lead. In September, the Isle of Wight Council and leading cabinet members will reveal more about what will happen next for the Children's Services Department. Meanwhile, a leadership challenge has also been launched and will go to a vote on September the 20th.
Latest scam warnings issued for the Isle of Wight from the Island Echo. Read by Joyce. Trading Standards has issued several new scam warnings today for the Isle of Wight. One person reported that she commented on her Facebook page and within an hour had received 2 WhatsApp messages purporting to be a recruitment company offering help with getting a job. This was shortly followed by a text saying, quote, "Hi Mum, I've broken my phone, can you help me?" Quote. Not usually being one to receive many scam calls, it seems apparent that the Facebook comment led to these contacts. It shows how careful you have to be when engaging on social media. Ironically, the message is warning users about clicking on links in posts. Both messages were reported and the numbers blocked. Rogue traders. Another warning about rogue traders has seen a report from a resident who was at his parents' when two of them knocked to the door and tried to cut their hedge for £400. Afterwards, he spoke to some of the neighbours, and they had been offered the same service for as much as £800. Please do not engage with anyone on the doorstep, no matter how legitimate they may look, wearing work gear, logos, and names on clothing and vehicles. They will not be genuine traders, will most likely do a poor job and charge you extortionate amounts for the work. Forward scam text to 7726.
This is Michael reading an article from Ireland Echo. New recruits sought for Ireland's Police Cadet Unit. Local youngsters aged between 13 and 16 are being invited to join the Isle of Wight Police Cadets Unit. The volunteer police cadets meets in Newport every Wednesday evening during school term time between the hours of 18:30 and 20:30. Cadets are provided with the opportunity to learn about the police, develop new skills and experience, perform public-facing duties within the community, and volunteer in exciting policing initiatives. It is free to attend. Sessions will begin again in September, so those interested are urged to express an interest at the earliest opportunity by emailing their name, age, and school/college to iow.vpc@hampshire.police.uk.
This is Patrina reading from Ireland Echo. Ryde's HSBC and NatWest Bank branches close their doors in further blow for town. HSBC in Ryde closed its doors for good yesterday, Wednesday, shortly after NatWest did the same on the 10th of August. It means that both banks will be left with just one branch on the island, both situated in Newport. Ryde is now left with just one bank branch, Lloyd's, as well as Yorkshire Building Society and Nationwide Building Society, the latter of which is only open 3 days a week. It is not yet apparent what will become of the former bank premises, with for let signs now present above HSBC. The former premises of NatWest occupies a large and prominent location in the town on land where the Theatre Royal once stood, and the external signage and the ATM have been quickly removed. As previously reported by Ireland Echo, plans were submitted in May to also strip the building of all bank-related fittings such as the external signage, night safe and the ATM, so that it would be ready for reoccupation by someone else in a timely manner. But it is not yet clear who will take over the premises. NatWest has announced that they will be providing a weekly pop-up bank at Ryde Library every Monday between 9:30 and 13:30 until the 6th of November. Customers will be offered help with accessing and using digital services and pointed to alternative in-person banking services provided by the local post offices and local free-to-use cash machines. However, customers will not be able to withdraw money or cash cheques at the pop-up bank.
This article, read by Howard, is from the Ireland Echo and concerns a Morris Minor rally next month. Owners of classic cars are invited to the Isle of Wight Morris Minor rally next month. The event, which is to be held at the Isle of Wight Steam Railway on Sunday 3rd of September, is free to attend, and vehicle owners are welcome to bring their cars to display on the day. All entrants can purchase a commemorative plaque with the programme for just £2. There'll be stalls, auto jumble, raffle, displays from Haven Falconry and live music from Dave B. The Old Girl open-top bus will be providing mystery tours throughout the day, provided by Southern Vectis. The steam railway will be open to visit the train story, museum and workshops. Train rides will be available from 10 o'clock. You need to show your commemorative plaque for a discount on rail journeys. Anyone wishing to join the club at the rally will be entitled to a special offer of 15 months of membership for the price of 12 months at just £8. All proceeds from the raffle will be donated to the Phoenix Project Isle of Wight, an island charity that supports adults with learning difficulties.
Fare increase on Southern Vectis bus services from September, from the Island Echo, read by Joyce. Southern Vectis has announced that from September fares on the island-wide services are to increase. In an announcement made yesterday, Tuesday, the travel provider confirmed that from 3rd September fare prices will change, but the £2 fare cap on single fares will remain until 31st October, as previously reported by Island Echo. Come November, single adult fares will increase by 20p, while child singles and transfer singles will increase by 10p. Night rider fares will now be £7. The new fares will be cheapest for those who use the Southern Vectis app. Paper tickets will cost a small amount more. It is the third price increase in the past 18 months, with previous increases in both January and October 2022. A Southern Vectis spokesperson has said, like everywhere, our costs are continuing to rise and need to increase our fares in order to continue offering the comprehensive service we provide. These tickets still offer great value for money.
This is Michael reading an article from Island Echo. Works at Lord Louis Library in Newport near completion. The Lord Louis Library in Newport will soon be opening as normal after months of work. Essential works which started earlier in the year are almost complete. The library, which has remained open for the majority of the time by operating from the children's library only, will close for 2 days on Monday the 11th and Tuesday the 12th of September 2023. This is to allow staff to move books and items back into the front half of the building. The library will fully reopen on Thursday the 14th of September and will once again be accessed via the main entrance at the front of the building. Rob Jones, the councillor's library service manager, said, "Customers should continue using the temporary entrance located in Church Lytton until Saturday the 9th of September, which is also the last day of the Summer Reading Challenge. We will then be closing the library on Monday the 11th and Tuesday the 12th of September, whilst we fully restock the library. Is closed as usual on Wednesday. We very much look forward to welcoming you back to the main library when we fully reopen on Thursday the 14th of September. A big thank you to all our customers for their patience and understanding during this time. Please remember you will still be able to use all the online services and other island libraries whilst the Lord Louis Library is closed for 2 days at the end of the works. When the library reopens fully, customers will no longer be able to access the library via the temporary entrance in Church Lytton. Activities such as Rhyme Time, Lego Club and the Over 60s group will be running as normal again, All public computers will be available for use, as well as printing and photocopying facilities. In addition to Lord Louis Library, customers can also use free online services or visit other libraries. For more details on all library activities, following the Library Service Facebook page www.facebook.com/IW Libraries.
This is Patrina reading from Isle of Wight Radio. No disabled access to Ventnor seafront for more than 6 months. There will be no disabled pedestrian access to a popular Isle of Wight seafront during major upcoming works. At the start of September, the Reen Howe Walk, a pedestrian footway around Ventnor Cascades, will be closed for 27 weeks, so 140 metres of railings can be replaced and the walkway resurfaced. It was announced at a public meeting last night, Tuesday. No alternative pedestrian route will be signposted to direct foot traffic down to Ventnor Esplanade. That is because Island Road said there are no accessible routes to the seafront, as all other ways down have steps, and Shaw Hill, the road that runs through the Cascades, has no dedicated footpath. If mobility is not an issue, there are paths people can take. Fears were raised at the meeting that pedestrians would just walk down Shaw Hill, mixing with the vehicle traffic, causing chaos, and accidents would happen. Island Road said it would not be able to put temporary barriers on Shaw Hill, as it would stop vehicle access, and if it were to close the road, it would make it a pedestrian walkway. The seawall restoration work around Eastern Cliff Esplanade would not be able to continue. A suggestion was made, which Island Road said it would speak to the Isle of Wight Council about, to have a shuttle service taking pedestrians up and down the Cascades. Others were concerned the lack of signposting would impact businesses, and the end of the tourist season would be disrupted by the work. Island Road said there was no easy way to deliver the project, and doing the work now was the lesser of two evils. If the work does go as planned, the walkway should be open before Easter. Inspections last year determined the current railings on the Reen Howe Walk are not fit for purpose, as the cast iron is sheared and heavily broken. It is now becoming untenable to fix small sections of it. If it let the railings, Island Road said, it would risk a longer emergency closure if something were to happen. Concerns were raised about the proposed vertical railings to replace the current horizontal ones, but the project manager said they needed to complete the work to modern safety standards.
This article, read by Howard, is from the Isle of Wight Radio and concerns Buy British policies. Mr. Bob Seeley has signed an open letter from over 100 MPs calling on supermarkets to highlight the very best of British produce by incorporating a Buy British section online. The letter, written by Dr. Luke Evans MP and supported by 110 cross-party MPs, states, "Our task is simple. Create a tab that collates produce from farmers, citing consumer choice, environmental benefits and support for farmers as reasons to make the choice." The Buy British tab will collate produce from across the UK, so customers have greater power in their choices, enable them to support the nation's farmers quickly and easily. The MPs say the change could be achieved by the click of a mouse, with many shops already labelling British products. Isle of Wight MP Bob Seeley said, "I supported this important initiative because farmers work tirelessly from dawn until dusk to produce food for us to eat. So, in return, we need to support them. One way we can do this is to make sure consumers have the option to buy British produce online as well as in shops. Here on the island, we want to support our farmers and food producers. This simple change on a web page would help to ensure homegrown food is easily identifiable, something I wholeheartedly support. Minette Batters, president of the NFU, stated, "We've been asking retailers to commit to signposting British produce for a number of years, so it's great to see British MPs and their constituents getting behind the idea of a Buy British tab online. It's often tricky to determine what products are produced in the UK, and this simple change would help the shoppers do that."
I am Gerard. Good
And
morning.
this is Imelda. Good morning to you. And we're reading the newspapers today. But before we start the second part of the talking news, here is this week's Society News for the 28th of August 2023. This is our last full week of no activities, and we reopen to members next Monday, the 4th of September, when swimming will resume. We do have one exception. Our coffee and chat is this Wednesday, the 30th. So please pop along to Millbrook House on Wednesday between 10 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. to enjoy coffee, cake and a chat with staff and members. We should like to say a big thank you to our wonderful volunteers who represented the charity in Newport's Illuminated Carnival, and we thank them for all their time and we're very grateful to them.
Our wonderful volunteers are busy preparing for Wolverton Garden Show this weekend, September the 2nd and September the 3rd. If you or anyone you know is attending, please ask them to pop by our stall and say hello. We are situated in Marquee number 3, the Food and Craft Marquee. We have a very large tombola on offer, as well as this year's Christmas cards for sale. Please remember, if you wish to join us either on Wet Wheels on September the 18th or Warner Holiday Break in October, you must call the office and put your name on our list. Date for your diary. Our next open day is on September the 13th between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. at the first Newport Scarf Hall, Wendy's Hall, St. John's Road, Newport. We will have several island and mainland-based exhibitors plus local charities on hand to discuss and support your needs.
And now we move on to the news items and the sport. And the first news item, major scheme to save homes from erosion. Plans are being drawn up to save 3,000 homes from potential coastal erosion, but it will mean the closure of two sections of a popular seafront walkway this winter. At a public meeting this week, it was revealed the sea moves closer into Ventnor every year, by up to 30 millimetres in the winter and between 5 millimetres and 12 millimetres in the summer. The town sits on a landslide. Oh, crikey, sorry, Marie. Shall I go home? Start again. The town sits on a landslide complex, which is the largest in northwestern Europe, according to the Environmental Agency. And if that is reactivated, more than 3,000 properties are at risk from coastal erosion. The defences on Ventnor seafront are already reducing the rate of coastal erosion, but they are ageing and in need of refurbishment or replacement. Investigation work will take place in September to help the Environment Agency determine a long-term solution for Ventnor and how quickly it needs to be in place. For 18 weeks from September the 4th, work will take place on the section of the promenade between Wheeler Bay and Bonchurch. The route will be closed from October the 1st, with no access to Wheeler Bay from any direction between November to January. At the other end of the esplanade, and at the same time, the Environmental Agency will also be undertaking investigations above the Western Cliffs to the south of Ventnor Park for 16 weeks. A section of the coastal path between La Falaise car park and the eastern end of the park will be closed for 2 weeks at the start and end of the period. Originally, it was thought the agency would have until 27 to 28 to reduce the defences, but with recent movement it says it doesn't have that time. There is no solution yet, but the favoured option for slope stabilisation is using a groundwater management system, which uses a well to pump water from the ground to reduce water levels. The Environmental Agency needs to see if such a system is possible for Ventnor, so tests will be done over the winter when groundwater levels are highest. Also on the esplanade at Eastern Cliff, the Isle of Wight Council is hopeful to reopen the walkway by February, following more than a year's closure after part of the seawall collapsed. Piles are being dug 12 metres into the sea floor, and a new seawall is being formed. The work to fix the 180-metre stretch of seawall would be finished by the end of November, but railings and a redesign of the promenade will be installed before it can be officially reopened in February.
4-person yacht collided with shingle bank. A 4-person yacht left stranded after colliding with a large shingle bank off Yarmouth prompted an emergency response last Saturday. Yarmouth RNLI was alerted shortly before 5:30 p.m. to a 40-foot sailing yacht 3.5 nautical miles west of Yarmouth Harbour, which had collided with a large single bank in the Solent and was stranded, unable to refloat. The volunteer RNLI crew were quickly on the scene and assessed the situation to see if the vessel had been damaged after running aground. As it was nearing low tide and would take a couple of hours for the tide to turn and start flooding, which would have helped the vessel refloat naturally, the decision was made for Yarmouth RNLI to return to the station. The lifeboat would relaunch at a later time and return in the chance the casualty vessel required further assistance. Whilst at the station, the vessel refloated without suffering damage and continued her journey unaided.
Ride dental practice in move to new site. A dental practice is on the move to state-of-the-art facilities after it lost its home in Ryde. Tower House Dental Clinic on Rink Road, Ryde, has announced its significant milestone of moving to Wootton in the former bathroom showroom on the High Street. It was based in the same building as the Tower House GP surgery, but needed to move as the doctors were looking to expand, taking over the space formerly held by the dentists. The clinic has been temporarily closed in August while the move to Wootton High Street was taking place and was unable to complete appointments, postponing them to a later date. A spokesperson for the dentist clinic said the first priority would be to complete outstanding treatments and emergency appointments. Routine appointments would then continue as normal. The dental clinic said its new facilities will enable it to offer patients an enhanced service and advanced technology. It will open again on August the 29th and patients will receive an email updating them.
Shoes giant for H&M store. Plans to open a branch of Europe's largest shoe retailer on the island have been submitted. The former H&M store on South Street, Newport, has been empty since February, but could now become a branch of the international shoe chain Dykman. It is hoped to open in Newport in October. Submitted plans to the Isle of Wight Council show rows of shelves on the ground floor to hold pairs of shoes. While H&M was spread out over 2 floors, according to planning documents, Dykman will only have the ground floor open to customers. The lift previously used by customers to get upstairs would be blocked off and the customer stairs removed. The retailer stocks brand favorites include Nike, Adidas, Puma, Fila, Crocs, and Levi. You can view the applications 2301477 on the Isle of Wight Council Planning Register. Comments can be submitted until the 22nd of September. Dykman is currently recruiting staff.
NatWest now offers pop-up bank. NatWest is providing a pop-up bank in Ryde to provide support and answer questions from customers. The community pop-up will support customers with any queries around their banking service, frauds and scams, as well as supporting customers to access and use NatWest's digital services. The pop-up will be open in Ryde Library every Monday from August the 14th to November the 6th from 9:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. NatWest is the 3rd major bank to leave Ryde within the last year. NatWest's team at the pop-up can also signpost customers to other local in-person banking services, such as the day-to-day banking services offered at local post offices and support with local free-to-use cash machines. Sarah Wraith, the local director at NatWest, said, "When we make changes to our branch network, we work hard to make sure that there's support available in the local community for those affected by the change. Branch closures can affect people who are less confident with the digital alternatives we offer, or don't yet know about the alternative options available for banking in person. So our community pop-ups provide a service tailored to the needs of customers in that community while signposting to others in-person services. Friendly staff will be on hand to help those customers that do still want to speak to us face-to-face with their banking-related queries, as well as offering advice and support on using our digital services. Community pop-ups are cashless, so if customers need to withdraw money or cash a cheque, they will need to visit their nearest branch or post office. Staff at the pop-ups can help direct customers to these services.
Wild Ponies' new home. Wild ponies have been introduced to former farmland on the Isle of Wight as part of a project to return the site to nature. Logan and Luther, 2 Exmoor ponies, are settling into their new home at the 100-acre Little Duxmoor farm off Mersley Down. The 1-year-olds arrived at the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust site around 3 weeks ago from the Knepp Estate, another rewilding area. Their job on the island is similar and quite simple: to create diversity and habitat niches by grazing. Essentially, they are living lawn mowers. We are trying to mimic a natural system, and grazing is integral to that. Jamie Marsh, director of Wilder White and Wilder Seas, told the county press. We are allowing rewilding principles and nature-led principles to restore the habitats and the site for wildlife. I like to think of it as farming wildlife. The ponies' teeth allow them to graze coarse vegetation like gorse, bramble, and thistles that could otherwise overwhelm the heathland landscape. Their small, sharp hooves create bare ground and vital edge habitat in heathland, which can support rare invertebrates, birds, and low-growing plants. Jamie describes Logan and Luther as semi-feral. They are left to roam and eat as they please, but staff are there to monitor and help where necessary. Already the pair have started to create trackways in the site, which is handy for staff needing to walk through it. There are signs that the ponies are established in the area too. Circular tracks have been spotted, which signals they are marking out their territory. Later this year, there are plans to introduce another 3 ponies, around 20 cattle and some pigs. Little Duxmoor, a former arable farm, was purchased by Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust in April 2020. 3 years on, Jamie said the benefits of rewilding are already being felt. He said, there are good increases in bird numbers, butterflies and moths. It goes to show, if you take the pressure off the land, nature will respond and fill it with wildlife and biodiversity. He said soil survey results from the site also show there have been a significant drop in soil mineral nitrogen. Little Duxmoor is not open to the public, but Jamie hopes there will be some guided walks in the near future.
Podiatrist steps in to save foot centre. The foot therapy centre in Newport has been saved from closure. Kieran Dillon, who has run it since 2006, said a podiatrist stepped in after reading the County Press article published earlier this month. Mike Tattersall has now agreed to take it over from September. Mike has spent the last 18 years working as a locum for the National Health Service in various locations across the UK. He is currently a member of the National Health Podiatry team based at St Mary's Hospital, where he will continue working. Mike's range of practice includes routine care, biomechanical list, diabetes assessments, wound management and nail surgery. After trying for 3.5 years to find someone to take over, Kieran said the news came as a huge relief, especially given the national shortage of podiatrists. Last month, Kieran told the county press, unfortunately, the problem is nationwide. Podiatry doesn't make the news, but the profession is struggling in the same way as dentists and pharmacists, etc.
No fire stations closing, by Louise Hill. There are no current plans to close fire stations on the Isle of Wight, a service boss has said, following fears Yarmouth could be at risk. Concern had been raised by Yarmouth town councillors, including a former mayor, that the crew could not turn out to emergencies due to lack of firefighters. Last week, the town council agreed to submit an application to the Isle of Wight Council to make the fire station on Station Road an asset of community value. If successful, it would put the organisation at the front of the queue to buy the site, if it were ever put up for sale. Councillor Thomas Cowley raised the matter, saying the town council did not know what was going to happen with the station in the future. It was at risk, he said, as there were not enough volunteers. Former town mayor, Councillor Steve Cowley, said there were only 2 members of crew, so Yarmouth Fire Brigade could not turn out to emergencies. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Services Assistant Director of Operations, Jason Avery, did not comment on Yarmouth's crew specifically, but said teams in the West Wight were operating on a flexible crew model. It means Yarmouth and Freshwater are regularly working together to ensure better availability and the most effective responses to incidents, he said. We are not currently looking to close any stations, Mr. Avery said. We are investing in our island estate and have an extensive refurbishment program in place, which has already seen improvements made to all island stations, including Yarmouth and Freshwater. He said discussions are ongoing with partner agencies in the West Wight about the availability of space for potential co-locating to make efficient ways of working. Mr. Avery said they always look at how best they can allocate resources based on risks, and they would always engage with local communities on any potential significant changes in the area. A new 5-year safety plan is currently being developed, which sets out the risks in the area and how the fire service plans to address them. There is a vacancy for an on-call firefighter in Yarmouth, as well as at 5 other stations across the island: Bembridge, Cowes, Ryde, Sandown and Ventnor.
Hefty timetable for tricky work. A considerable amount of scaffolding, excavation of the footway, and the twisting and rising nature of the landscape are some of the reasons given as to why work to replace railings in Ventnor will take around 6 months. Work to install new safety railings at the picturesque Rene House Walk around the Cascades on Ventnor seafront will take 27 weeks, Island Road said. The project will see the installation of 140 metres of railings to replace the current warped and rusty ones, and the walkway will also be resurfaced. The county press asked Island Roads why the project would take so long. A spokesman explained, "This is a bespoke project at a unique heritage location, taking place to minimise disruption to the holiday trade at the time of year not usually conducted for such work." The 27-week timescale reflects these challenges and also our determination to deliver a complex project to a high standard at an iconic seafront location. The project will be completed under the terms of the existing Highways PFI contract, so it is in everyone's interest to complete the work in a timely manner. Specific features of the work also influence the time frame. Firstly, the need to excavate large sections of the footway to bespoke new concrete foundations can be laid. The railings have to be manufactured to a bespoke specification to reflect the twisting and rising nature of the location. There is also a considerable amount of scaffolding required, and this will take time to erect. The cascades will remain open to traffic, but the footpath closed. It was announced at a public meeting on Tuesday, no alternative pedestrian route will be signposted to direct footpathing down to Ventnor Esplanade. That is because Island Road said there are no accessible routes to the seafront, as all other ways down have steps, and Shore Hill, the road that runs through the Cascades, has no dedicated footpath. If mobility is not an issue, there are paths people can take. Fears were raised that pedestrians would just walk down Shore Road, mixing with the vehicle traffic, causing chaos, and accidents could happen.
Celebs Back Island Story Competition. Sight for White's short story writing competition is back for 2023 with celebrities backing from Chesney Hawkes, Debbie Maggie, Richard Cadell and R.C. Bridgestock. Now in its 14th year, the competition features its usual age categories ranging from under 8 to 18 plus. Organizers are keen to honor Edana Mingela, an avid supporter of the competition who died last year. Chris Kane, competition organizer, said, "This is an exciting opportunity for budding island writers to become published authors and also win some great prizes. This year's theme is the future, which will give our writers scope, creativity, and a chance to let their imaginations run wild. Each category winner will have their story read out by one of this year's celebrities, Richard Cadell, best known as the Hand of Puppet Sooty, international crime writers R.C. Bridgestock, Strictly Come Dancing finalist and wife and assistant to the late magician Paul Daniels, and the one and only singer Chesney Hawkes. The closing date for entries is November the 3rd, with the award ceremony taking place on December the 8th. Entry forms are available by email admin@iwsb.org.uk or in person from Waterstones, Sight for White, Dress for Less, Vectis Radio and the Riverside Centre.
Decision is due on golf lease. A new 5-year lease could be given to the new tenant of Brown's Golf Course. The attraction on Culver Parade, Sandown, has been open since the end of July under Paul Saville after previous uncertainty over its future. Now the Isle of Wight Council is looking to secure the longevity of the attraction while it works on regeneration plans for Culver Parade and Yaverland. It means Mr. Saville could be in place until 2027, although a mutual 6-month break clause has been written into the contract for early termination if required. New tenants were first sought for the business in May, after the previous holders ended their tenancy, at which point 29 people came forward. Only 8 submitted a bid. At the moment, the putting greens, pitch and putt course, and the front section of the pavilion are open, offering ice creams and hot and cold refreshments. It is hoped the rest of the building and courses could be opened, but there are major repairs needed. The delegated decision to grant the lease will be made on August the 30th by Councillor Julie Jones-Evans, the Cabinet Member for Economy, Regeneration, Culture and Leisure.
Exam results pre-COVID-19 comparison. Preliminary A-level results for the Isle of Wight show they were in line with the pre-COVID grades, according to data released by the Office of Qualifications and Examinations Regulation, known as Ofqual. However, the island appears to be one of the two lowest performing areas in England. A-level passes, grade A to E, stand at 94.5% this year, slightly under 2019's pass rate, but better than 2018's. Performance improved for grade C and above, with 65% falling into the higher bracket. That is the same as 2018 and higher than 2019, when 62.9% achieved this level. There were slightly fewer A stars, 4.2%, the same percentage as in 2018, compared to 4.8% in 2019. Overall, Isle of Wight performances continues to lag behind the All England data. The Isle of Wight Council has not released data. Instead, it said, "We will not know how the island did until early in 2024, when validated data is published." Initial information shows the 2023 results were in line with levels being achieved before the pandemic, in a cohort unable to sit their GCSEs in exam conditions. More results on page 28 of the County Press.
And with that, we're going to finish the news and go on to Wight memories and nostalgia. And we're looking today at an article by Sarah Burdett, who is the chair of the Isle of Wight Society. The talk is about a look at the Isle of Wight's churches. The Georgian churches and chapels on the Isle of Wight were often of simple designs compared with the later Victorian Gothic structures. Of the 130 or so places of worship on the island, in 2023, only 61 are Anglican. No conformist chapels such as Baptists first appeared in 1774, when a simple chapel was built in the High Street in Newport. This is presently the Unitarian Church with Victorian additions. Methodism was popular, and the Wesley brothers preached in Cowes in 1735. John Wesley returned to open a chapel in Newport in 1781. A beautiful example of the Wesleyan chapels is the Methodist chapel at God's Hill in the heart of the village. This is a simple building built in 1838, just after Victoria became Queen. It is a great contrast to the elaborate Anglican church on the hill, and will be worth a visit to pause and reflect. It is surprising that it was not until 1791 that the Act of Parliament was passed to allow new Roman Catholic churches to be built. The island was quickly off the mark, and in the same year the Catholic Church in Pyle Street, Newport, was the first to be built anywhere in England. Dedicated to St Thomas of Canterbury, it is simply built of red brick with a white stone porch facing the road, and this is listed Grade 2 star. The Catholic church with the same dedication in Cowes was built just 5 years later, but has some Victorian changes thanks to damage from a tornado. Bible Christian chapels also appeared, encouraged by Mary Toms, who was a very popular preacher around 1820. Many of these congregationals combined with Wesleyan Methodists in later years. Congregationalists built some early chapels, such as that by the Chain Ferry in East Cowes in 1823, the first church in the town.
Many villages still have a chapel building. Not all of these are still places of worship. Several have been carefully converted to accommodation, such as the early Victorian Wootton Wesleyan Chapel. New Anglican churches were built in the expanding towns, often by a local landowner as a chapel of ease. The expanding town of Ryde was in the parish of Newchurch, 6 miles away. So Mr. Player built St. Thomas Church in 1719. This was replaced in 1827 by the church. Several prominent architects designed island churches. John Nash, the Regency architect, was a resident of East Cowes, and in 1804 a church warden of Whippingham. The small old church was pulled down, and Nash designed a new one with external stairways to access the galleries above the nave. By 1861, this building had been demolished to make way for Queen Victoria's new church. In 1831, John Nash designed St. James Church for East Cowes. Princess Victoria, visiting the island with her mother, laid the foundation stone. Unfortunately, this was lost during extensive enlargement in the 1860s. John Nash is buried there by the tower he designed. Visit and explore some of the island's rural and urban churches and chapels this summer, which are part of our rich island heritage.
And now we go on to My View. And this week, My View is Colin Palmer, the director of an investor in White Community Energy. The cost of energy has become a big concern. The market for power is extremely volatile, and recent price spikes in international markets have had a direct bearing on what we as customers have to pay. This volatility is totally driven by the cost of gas on international markets, from which we in the UK have no protection. Every last drop we extract from the North Sea will be sold into this market at prices that are way above the cost of production. We need look no further than the recent profit announcements from the oil majors to see where all the money goes. But power generated from renewable energy is not sold on international markets. It is sold nationally on the UK's wholesale electricity market. The price of power from renewable sources, primarily wind and solar energy in the UK, is stable, and while the output does vary from day to day, the total contribution is rapidly increasing from one year to the next. Back in 2013, renewable sources provided just 15% of our electricity, about the same as nuclear power, while in 2022, wind power alone provided 27%, with 11% coming from other renewable sources. On occasion, 80% of our electricity has come from a mix of wind and solar power. The cost of power from renewable sources varies with the type of technology and the age of the project. But one thing is for certain: the long-term trend is for costs to steadily reduce. Back in 1992, my then company built one of the first wind energy projects in the UK. We were paid a heavily subsidised price, yet today large offshore wind projects and large-scale solar farms are able to sell their power with no subsidy or at below the long-term market prices. And here lies the key to keeping electricity prices down. The more new low-cost renewable energy which is built, the more low-cost power will come onto the market, potentially crowding out expensive volatile power from gas. And what applies at the national level can apply equally more locally, with the added advantage of profits flowing to local people rather than distant investors. Community energy, renewable generation, which is owned by community-spirited organisations such as White Community Energy here on the island, can generate energy at costs below market prices, thus producing financial surpluses to be spent locally for local community benefits. While present regulation prohibits us from directly selling our power to local customers, the signs that this will change. We will then move into a world where local people own and control local power generation, selling the power locally and using financial surpluses for local community benefit. White Community Energy intends to be at the heart of this transition, and we are in the progress of raising new share capital to take us to that future. I hope that you will be considered joining us.
My views from Bob Seeley, Isle of Wight MP. Council should put children and teachers first. In some parts of the country, MPs and council spend their time attacking each other, playing foolish games. As islanders know, that is not my style. I will work with whoever runs County Hall to get a better deal for the island. So even when I disagree with the anti-Tory alliance group of councillors currently in charge, I generally bite my tongue. However, I am now very concerned about decision-making around our schools. As of writing this column, the Alliance have apologized. And so they should. I wrote to them a fortnight ago saying the situation was unacceptable. Whether that prompted action, I do not know. The most important thing is that they sort things out quickly. The background is this. The island's head teachers have said that for island children to receive a good primary education, several primary schools should close. The school funding is based on pupil numbers. Fewer pupils equals less funding. There are at least 213 vacant reception places. Schools with too few pupils lack the funding to provide a good education. Nobody, not least me, likes the idea of shutting schools. But worse is schools failing our children. The Alliance Group accepted the decision outlined in a school place planning report before changing their minds. As a result, teachers are quitting the schools earmarked for closure, whilst parents are finding alternative schools. This is shambles. Teachers are frustrated. Parents are worried. Keeping schools open, which are too small, while superficially attractive, only worsens the situations. Debts rack up, teachers leave, and children's education is damaged. Letting schools collapse is cruel and incompetent. We already know that some island schools need more support, especially with early reading skills. That's why, with the Department for Education, we organized a reading conference on the island recently. There are other related education issues which worry me too. First, we've been supported by Hampshire County Council's education officers. That relationship is under threat. Why? And what will take its place? Second, homeschool children are up by 50% since COVID. Who is checking on these new children? Summing up, our young people need and deserve good education. Yet our primary schools are being held hostage by councillors unwilling to make decisions. The Alliance Group's apology is a welcome start. They now need to act in the interest of children, parents, and teachers, and they need to do so now.
I'm now going to read for you some of the things in What's On the island, and then Gerard will read a few more just to finish off. The first thing that the news is that Waverley's back, and to find out in detail and book a place, you call 0141 243 2224. And they're going from all over the place. They're going from Ryde Pier out to No Man's Land. They're going from Yarmouth Pier, cruise around the Needles, and it's all happening at the beginning of September. So the Waverley will be sailing up and down the Solent and out at sea. The next thing is Sandown and Shanklin Military Band. This is taking an evening concert. I'm afraid I haven't got the date written here, so you'll have to find that out. Sandown and Shanklin Military Band. Ryde Carnival is taking place. Main procession will start on Ryde Seafront on Thursday, August the 31st at 6:30 p.m. and head up through the town to finish at Ryde Esplanade. The carnival is inclusive. Everyone is welcome to take part as spectators or performers. Current performers include marching bands, royalty floats, community and family groups. Another thing that is happening is the Weekly Chess Club. Weekly Chess Club for all ages, held between 2 and 5 on Tuesdays at Cowes Library. Go along to play or learn from others, supported by Chess in Schools and Communities. All children must be accompanied by an adult, and for more information, you phone Cowes Library 293341. And finally, for my bit, the Medina Theatre has Jim Davidson for one night only on Friday the 8th of September. Ticket prices are £28, but the people's favourite and one of Britain's greatest ever comedians, Jim Davidson. Stuart Michael is taking part at the Medina on the 16th of September at 7:30 p.m. Tickets again at £29. Bridget Christie on the 22nd of September. Tickets are £21. Tango Tells a Tale the Argentinian Tangle Show, and that's taking place on Saturday the 23rd of September at 7:30 with tickets at £15, £13 concessions. Blake is going to be on Saturday, September the 30th at 7:30. Tickets for Blake are £28. And Abamania is on Saturday the 14th of October. If you want more details than this, you phone the Medina Theatre, which is 823-884.
The Phantom of the Opera, Western classic for Island debut. The magic of Andrew Lloyd Webber's iconic musical, Phantom of the Opera, will grace an island stage for the very first time in February next year. And if you would like to get involved, now is your chance. Ventnor Theatre Group is bringing the much-loved musical to Shanklin Theatre thanks to the production team behind 2019's Jesus Christ Superstar. Jeannie Brown, as director, is supported by Tony Careless and Rosie Hayward in the musical director chairs, with Amy Anderson choreographing. Auditions are being held on Saturday, September the 10th, with information available on Ventnor Theatre Group Facebook page.
And now we're going on to the letters. We shall read one each of these, but there are some more over. First one is from Jackie Baines from Old Portsmouth. I would like to offer my commiseration to Maureen Mears following the very unpublic-spirited theft of the most attractive seaside-themed postbox topper she had spent many hours lovingly creating for the enjoyment of all. I've been an admirer of these novelty and topical toppers for several years and recall spotting a beautiful crown atop a postbox as we walked up to Carisbrooke Castle last year whilst on holiday on the island. These toppers bear close examination for the extremely well-crafted workmanship they exhibit. Why do selfish people have to spoil such altruistic gestures? I do hope that Maureen sees the return of this delightful topper, which will undoubtedly brighten the day for those arriving at Shanklin train station and other passers-by.
My Call to Arms, a letter from Colin Mapham of Sevenoaks. Dear editor, all islanders under 50 should heed this call to arms to prevent the island being turned into a pariah state, housing only the privileged and the elderly. That will surely happen if White Link and Red Funnel are allowed to continue financially crippling stranglehold that will ultimately squeeze the very life out of the island. Their prices are so obscene that many people and businesses will soon be unable to either holiday or do business on the island. People like me, for instance, who have been holidaying on England's little paradise from my home in Kent for nearly 20 years, but who can't justify the crippling fares anymore. It's probably fair to say that islanders over 50, quite a few of whom are quite comfy financially anyway, are more concerned about the past rather than an uncertain future. Hence, that call to arms, not literally, folks, to the under 50s who are having their futures and those of their children and grandchildren potentially sentenced to life imprisonment as the UK's very poor relations, probably worse off in some cases than those housed in the island's prisons. If the pundits are to be believed, the present government is destined to be kicked out at the next general elections. I am not banging the drum for any political party, but whoever contests that election will be very anxious to win the safe Isle of Wight seat. Which brings me to the present incumbent, one Bob Seeley, a former soldier, but an MP who appears to have done very little fighting on behalf of you islanders. As far as the ferry company's commercial stronghold is concerned, things seem to have got worse since he was elected, rather than better. Now is the time to answer the call to arms and go into battle to achieve real change for everyone on the island.
And this letter is from the Chair of Yarmouth Town Council, Steve Cowley, School Site Steering Group. I would like to thank all who attended the Yarmouth meeting on August the 15th and showed overwhelming support for the plan to acquire the site for the community in perpetuity. The bid to buy the site was unanimously supported by Yarmouth Town councillors. Bob Seeley MP also attended, saying afterwards, "I strongly support a community-based solution. I've made my opinion clear to the council. In my discussions with council officers, my understanding is that best value is a broad term when including social good, such as affordable housing, jobs and the new Scout Hut. So I am hoping the offer put in by the council will be seriously considered." The bid document was prepared by the steering committee with help from the Isle of Wight Council over 8 months and ran into some 60 pages. We've consulted all those who showed an interest in the site and accommodated many in the plan. The steering group comprised 3 members from the community: John Calcutt, Louise Metcalf and Aid Evans, both 2 town councillors, and many thanks for their help and guidance.
Proud of Pride, a letter from Chris Locke from Ryde. It was only a few years ago a long-serving Tory Isle of Wight MP made some homophobic remarks which made people around the country think the island was homophobic. And thankfully, as a result, he stood down. Islanders don't like to be told what they are or what they are not, and the subsequent Pride events were a great success. The most recent Pride event last week seemed well supported and great fun, with many islanders, gay and heterosexual, having a good time. My wife and I spoke to a number of people, many who had come from all over the south of England, bringing valuable income to Ryde and the island. So good news all round.
And this one is from R. Whiting of Brading. As I sit here in my garden with the blue sky above, perhaps the RSPB should come to the fore and help the people of Brading and lessen the number of crows, jackdaws, magpies and rooks that have actually taken over the whole area of Brading. I thought the RSPB were for the protection of all birds. But this moment in time, the balance is wrong, and total imbalance has been created. Gone are the small garden birds that used to visit, too many species to mention. These smaller birds cannot compete with the aforementioned monsters. It would be interesting to hear other people's views on this issue. A proper organised cull is required locally and even nationally. The problem is also people feed these monsters in their own gardens, so their diets are well catered for. Now is the time to have some sort of rule of law to curtail this issue. If you are of a certain age like myself and remember the good old country ways, the plague that now exists in Brading was always known as vermin on wings. This has been greatly enhanced to a major pest problem. To my fellow Highlanders, please visit Brading at feeding time to see our black sky on a blue sky day.
And finally, removed from the NHS dental list by Mike Clements from Cowes. I read with great interest news of plans for a new dental practice in Ryde, though sadly, as yet no announcement whether they will take on NHS patients. My own Newport practice, with whom I had been an NHS patient for 35 years continuously, using COVID as a cover, decided recently that because I had not been for an appointment for 18 months, they would remove me from their NHS list. However, although the practice had my address, email address, and telephone number, no warning of the impending switch was given. I wrote a carefully worded appeal explaining that my keeping away was the result of appeals in the media for patients without COVID symptoms to stay away to allow others with emergency conditions to be treated. In a terse, unsympathetic reply, the practice told me there had been a notice on their notice board with a ruling since the new practice had replaced my original dentist some years ago, but I would be welcome to continue with them privately. I have, still angry, not taken up that offer, but have been hoping a new NHS practice would be established on the island sooner or later, and look forward to enrolling.
And with that, we'll say goodbye to you and have a nice weekend. Bye-bye from Imelda.
And bye-bye from Gerard.
The BBC In Touch programme follows, and the scaffolding news follows that.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. Later tonight, the job which is saving lives and at the same time providing employment for visually impaired women in Germany.
MTEs, medical tactile examiners, who have undergone the training of discovering hands, are able to detect lumps between 6 and 8 millimeters size, whereas we, as the gynecologists, normally find tumours between 1 and 2 centimeters.
So, are we likely to see it in the United Kingdom? Well, stay tuned. In recent times, we've been able to bring you some pretty encouraging news of drugs which have been able to improve the treatment of eye conditions like age-related macular degeneration, or AMD, and diabetic macular edema, or DMO as it's better known. Both result in vision loss caused by swelling behind the eye, which can now be slowed or even halted by injections. The really encouraging news is that the latest of these drugs has now been approved for use by the NHS for people with DMO, and it can be given progressively less often, reducing the need for repeated visits to your eye clinic. It's called Vabysmo, and in a moment we're going to be talking to one patient who's currently using it and who was involved with approving its use on the NHS. First, though, I'm joined by Robin Hamilton. Robin is ophthalmic surgeon at Moorfields Eye Hospital. Robin Hamilton, first of all, that's a grossly oversimplified summary of these conditions by me. Just explain a little more about how this group of drugs actually work and what they do.
They're called intravitreal drugs because they're injected directly into the vitreous in the eye. And they're very effective at reducing the swelling, as you say, from macular degeneration and from diabetic macular edema. And the most recent development is with faricimab or Vabysmo being the trade name. Now, this is a really good drug. It's a bispecific antibody that acts not only against the standard antivascular endothelial growth factor that we have been using in the past, but also has an action against angiopoietin-2. Now, this potentially, and in the studies, leads to not only the similar or improved visual acuity outcomes, but less frequent injections. It maintains vision in 90 to 95% of patients in macular edema and improves in just over a third. And it's worth noting that, in macular degeneration at the moment, this is 40,000 patients on a yearly basis who develop it who require the treatment. From a diabetic macular edema point of view, again, we get significant improvements in vision. And if you're going to reduce the number of injections by 2 in each year for both diseases, then that's a significant reduction in number of injections. And if you take into consideration that a lot of the patients would need a caregiver to come with them, and potentially will be out of action not only for the day that they come for the injection, but maybe 1 or 2 days afterwards. And that has a significant effect on people's life and lifestyles.
Let me bring in Bernie Warren. Now, Bernie, we talked to you some time ago about another drug, Beovu, which it was hoped would have a similar effect. Why didn't that work for you?
So the anti-VEGFs I've had before are just all anti-VEGFs. There's nothing more than that within it. But within this drug, there's another element on top. And so it's something that I've never had before. It's new to me, new to my eye. So it might, be a more positive outcome than I've had so far. For me, for example, I can't take or have steroid treatment because it raises my eye pressure. So I have to have anti-VEGF. I can't have anything else. So it was really important to try something that was anti-VEGF, which I can have safely, but also with a different element in it.
I mean, you've been receiving Vabysmo just over the past few weeks. Is it too early to say what the effects are?
Yes, I mean, for a patient who's starting on any anti-VEGF, they'll have what they call a loading dose. That's 4 injections, and that's every 4 weeks. And I've had 2. So it is a little bit early to say, but after a month or 2 months, we'll then have another look and see, right, what is the difference? And if there is a difference, then maybe we could go on to a treat and extend regime to elongate the time between the injections, which, I'm really keen for. I'm on a full weekly regime and have been on that since 2011. So, be able to have only a few injections would make a massive difference for me.
And for those who don't have this form of visual impairment, can you just explain the effect it has on you and the level of sight you have and what you can most optimistically expect from a drug like this?
Okay, so I have diabetic macular edema, and that has really affected my central vision. So the things I really struggle with are reading, watching television, recognising people's faces, being able to tell colours, all the practical day-to-day living things that you'd want to be able to do. I haven't been able to drive since 2013 because I just don't see well enough. It's hoped this drug for me will at least stabilise that vision. So I have had a decreasing in vision over the last few years, but if it could halt any other vision loss, that would be a real positive for me, because then I'll know, right, this is where I am, this is where I'm going to stay. Because the worry for me is, where am I going to end up with my vision? How much is that going to be affected over the next few years? So if we can stabilise it, brilliant.
Just finally, Robin, I mean, there seems to have been increasing developments in this field, and I'm wondering just how far can this go? Have we reached its limit, or could we see real further developments with drugs like this?
We'll continue to see further developments. And there is a lot in the pipeline, and the pharmaceutical companies are putting a lot of time and effort in with clinicians and patients. You'll also find patients on pharmaceutical boards directing them in the appropriate manner. But there are lots to come, including gene therapies for this disease, as well as the port delivery system, which may reduce the number of injections from 5 or 6 a year down to 1 or 2. Now, all of these are big steps, and all of these are going to create improvements for our patients.
I ask you this because I think the community of visually impaired people with all sorts of eye conditions are used to hearing these things, but they often turn out to be perhaps further away than, some of the indications that have been given. Sometimes is a bit of over-optimism.
I like to be optimistic, but I fully take on board what you're saying there. And sometimes these, either whether it's due to finishing studies or some of the political red tape that is involved in getting some of the drugs to market, it can appear slower than initially hoped from patients and hoped from physicians. But I think in this particular instance, and I'm sure Bernie would say the same, is that NICE pushed this through very quickly for both diseases, which was unprecedented, really.
Yeah.
You agree, Bernie?
Absolutely. When I started treatment back in 2011, there was just one drug available. And now, it's so exciting to hear, a new drug after a new drug, and then there's biosimilars coming along as well. So I think it's a really exciting time.
Bernie Warren, Robin Hamilton, thank you both very much indeed. Now, from jabs to jobs, and regular listeners to In Touch will know that when you're visually impaired, however high your skill levels, work isn't that easy to find. It's still the case that only around 30% of visually impaired people of working age are in a job, figures which are unfortunately replicated around the world. But there is one development we can tell you about which seems to buck that trend and at the same time saves lives, while it's also providing challenging and satisfying work for visually impaired women. The project, called Discovering Hands, involves people using touch to locate indications of breast cancer in early stages. The project was introduced by gynaecologist Dr. Frank Hoffman, and he joins us now. Dr. Hoffman, how did this all start? Where did the idea come from?
Working as a gynecologist means that early detection of breast cancer is one of my main tasks. And I was not happy with the quality I was able to offer my patients to do effective early detection. And I was thinking how I could make that better. And it was one morning under my shower, in this very creative moment between this idea came to me that should be the perfect job for visually impaired people. And from this first idea to the first project, it only took 6 months. And then we started the project with the support of LVR, the governmental organization which develops new jobs for visually impaired people.
Now, sometimes people do have rather romanticised views of blind people's abilities in terms not just of touch, but of, other senses, as if there are compensations. I'm just wondering how persuasive was the evidence that this would work and it was actually true that people could locate these kinds of problems with their fingers?
We did scientific research, and that showed that MTEs, medical tactile examiners, blind women who have undergone the training of discovering hands, are able to detect lumps between 6 and 8 millimeters size. Whereas we, as the gynecologists, normally find tumors between 1 and 2 centimeters in diameter. And that makes very, very meaningful difference, because the killer is not the lump in the breast. The killer is always the metastasizing cells who go to the liver, to the lungs, the bones, and the brain. And if you find breast cancer in this very first stage where it hasn't sent out its cells to the body, you will heal this patient.
And how did you do those tests? In those very early days when it was just an idea you'd had in the shower, how did you do those tests to find out whether it really was true?
I went to a vocational training center for visually impaired people, and together with the team, I developed an assessment which every candidate has to undergo to prove that she is able to use superior sense of touch, let's say, or have a superior sense of touch. And then we started scientific research together with the University of Essen, and there these results were found. We trained now more than 50 MTEs already in Germany.
Well, that was my next question. So you've got over 50 people actually doing this job?
Yeah, and not only in Germany, we do have a franchise partner in Austria, and we have a very big pilot project in India, where the social impact may be much higher than here in Europe.
Right, let me bring in Elvira Heisler, who is in Leipzig and carries out some of these examinations of the job. I mean, tell me about the kind of training and assessment you had to go through.
We were trained in medical terminology so that we can actually speak to the doctors face to face and give them proper medical terminology for what we are finding and where we are finding it. We learned about the breast and how it's made up and all the connections. I mean, the breast is only part of a whole, and there are a lot of links to other parts of the body, essentially the female parts. and we learned all about those. But we also had quite extensive training in almost like counseling skills, because we talk a lot to the women, and that's what I really love about this job. The examination takes about an hour, and throughout this hour we talk about breast health, about their own health, sometimes about blindness, sometimes about something completely different. It just depends what the patient wants and needs at the time. And we've been trained to become really open to that and responsive to that, and find out, is this woman very afraid? Does she want to talk about something completely different? Or would it help her to talk about cancer and the dangers? But of course, we also had extensive training in our tactile skills, because it's using our sense of touch in a completely different way from what we have done before. But the reaction is very different. I mean, some people apologize about 100 times for asking us questions. Some people really want to know and are really keen to know, how do you do things? How do you find your way? I've had people tell me, I don't believe you can't see. You move about in this room so safely. And I explained to them that I always put things in the same place every time I come in. I've had people, unfortunately, try to test me. Just leave a shoe or a bag or something in the middle of the way, telling me that they've never felt a lump before, and then I find it, and then they tell me, oh yes, I found that. I just wanted to know if you could find it. Things like that. Interesting little tests to see what I could and couldn't do. And I've had people who didn't want to know anything about blindness at all, because they were so anxious about the possibility of having cancer that that's all they wanted to talk about. It's very, very different.
Yeah. So
what happens?
All the varieties of human nature really involved in that.
Yes, basically. Yeah. Yes.
Just to go to a slightly different area, Alvira, just in terms of the practicalities of a breast examination, when should people be performing them, and where do people like you come in? I mean, you've said you're not a doctor, but presumably you've acquired quite a lot of knowledge about this over the years.
We say you can never start too early, and it's never too late to start. I've got patients from the ages of 18 to 92, but it's important that they either examine themselves or be examined at the right time in their monthly cycle, because the breast changes during your monthly cycle. It's important to be examined just after your monthly bleed, because the breast feels a lot more lumpy just before then.
Just one more thing. We've talked a lot about the patients, but this is quite interesting from a work point of view, and I'm interested in where this fits into the job situation for blind people generally, because I know you spent a long time working here in Britain, where this technique incidentally hasn't yet been introduced. But what was your sense of opportunities here in Britain, and how does it compare with Germany?
We're talking about two completely different systems, two completely different educational systems and vocational systems, I think, because in Germany there's a lot of emphasis on vocational qualifications. To do a certain job, you have to have the right qualification, and you start out as a young person doing that qualification, and then you're in that job. So for blind people, it's very often your typical office jobs, and you do an office-based qualification, and then you work in an office. Many blind people work as physiotherapists or masseurs, something like that. So they're all very vocational qualifications, whereas in Britain, I studied linguistics and then more or less worked my way up. I started as an admin assistant and worked my way up within the RNIB and became an educational advisor, and then changed jobs and worked for the Open Universities. I think the way in is a little bit more flexible in Britain, but I know more blind people in my own circle of friends and acquaintances who are working in Germany than I did in Britain. Let's put it that way.
Interesting. I just want to go back to Frank Hoffman. You've mentioned that it is happening now in other parts of the world, but is it going to come to Britain, and if so, when?
I hope so. I hope so that it will go to Great Britain one day. We intend to found an international company dedicated for starting new projects in other countries here in Europe and maybe worldwide, because we are not able to go proactively to other countries with the team structure we do have nowadays. But I hope very much that we are in a better position from the beginning of the next year. And Vera, I know that you would be the first one who would be willing to return to Great Britain to become an advisor and teaching MTE for the candidates there.
So that sounded like a job offer, Elvira. Well, Dr. Frank Hoffmann, Elvira Häusler, thank you both very much indeed. And that's it for today, but we are planning in the next few weeks a question and answer session with the organisation Guide Dogs. So if there's anything you'd like to raise, this is your opportunity to do it, whether it's training, eligibility, waiting lists, or indeed something else. You can email in touch at bbc.co.uk, leave a voice message on 0161 836 1338, and that goes for any issue that you'd like to raise with us. There's more information on our website as well. That's bbc.co.uk/in touch. From me, Peter White, producer Beth Hemmings, and studio managers Andy Garvey and Helen Williams. Goodbye.
The scaffolding news and skips for the weekend of the 28th of August 2023. In the Newport area, 62 Castlehold Lane, HSBC 101 St James's Street, 69 Hooks Way, 4 Carisbrook Road, 27 Pyle Street, 32 Chapel Street, 1A High Street, Oxfam 34 St James's Street, 27 Rugeley Street, JB Sports 110 to 11 High Street, and skips in Newport 55 Elm Grove. And in the Ryde area, Hills Court, Newport Street, Bar 74 Union Street, Flat 1 St Leonard's, Pier Road, Seaview, 11 Melville Street, 107 St John's Road, M&Co Store 160 to 161 High Street.
Yarmouth area, On the Rocks, Bridge Road. Cowes area, 71 York Street, 6 Terminus Road, 27 Solent View Road. Skips, East Cowes area, 142A Adelaide Road, East Cowes. Sandown area, Flat C, St George's Hall, George Street. Ventnor area, 31 Pier Street, 1 Spring Hill. Skips, Shanklin area, 24 Coronation Gardens.